My fiancée voicemail an hour before our wedding, saying she was having second thoughts. I replied, "As you wish." Then I walked straight to the altar, played her message for everyone, and raised a toast to my newfound freedom as her phone blew up with panicked cries. I'm 33, male, a corporate attorney. My life is built on precision contracts, clauses, airtight strategies. My relationship with Claire, 31, had been no different. From the moment we met at a networking gala 3 years ago, everything about her felt deliberate. She was charming, beautiful, calculated. A woman who knew how to walk into a room and command attention. Our romance moved fast. Too fast, some friends warned. Within a year, we were living together in a sleek condo downtown. Within 2, I had proposed. She said yes with tears in her eyes, posting the ring on Instagram within minutes. Comments flooded in, #PowerCoupleGoals, you two are perfect.
Act perfect?
That word clung to us like a brand. But perfection has cracks. Over the past year, Claire had grown restless. She complained that I was married to my work, that I treated love like a business deal. And maybe she wasn't wrong. My world runs on logic, on weighing gains against losses. Claire wanted grand gestures, spontaneous adventures. I gave her weekend getaways that doubled as networking trips and expensive gifts that I thought showed love. To her, they looked like transactions. Still, I thought we were solid, till that voicemail. It was the morning of our wedding, set at a historic estate outside the city. Guests were already arriving, tuxes pressed, dresses flowing, champagne chilled. I had been in the groom's suite, straightening my tie, when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number at first, her private line, the one she rarely used. I pressed play and her voice filled the room. "Jason, it's me. I'm scared. Maybe this isn't right. I just need some time to think. Please don't hate me." I remember staring at the phone, the corners of my vision tightening. Anger? No. Betrayal? Not exactly what I felt was. Clarity. This wasn't panic. This was relief dressed as heartbreak. She had given me the final proof I needed. I slipped the phone into my pocket, adjusted my cufflinks, and walked toward the altar with the calmness of a man about to argue an open and shut case. The guests rose, expecting to see the bride gliding down the aisle. Instead, I tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying through the hall. "I thought you'd all like to hear a message I received not too long ago." I hit play. Her trembling words echoed across the room, gasps, murmurs. One of her bridesmaids covered her mouth in shock. When it ended, I raised my glass of champagne. To freedom I toasted, the greatest gift I didn't know I needed. The room erupted not in applause, but in stunned silence. And that silence told me everything was about to change. The silence after my toast was suffocating, the kind that presses against your chest like a weight. For a moment, nobody moved. Then whispers began rippling through the room like cracks spreading across glass. I watched as heads turned, eyes darting, and phones began buzzing. Her maid of honor, Rachel, shot me a glare that could have burned a hole straight through my tuxedo. A couple of Claire's relatives scrambled toward the back, no doubt trying to reach her. My own parents, seated in the front row, exchanged a look half disbelief, half restrained pride. They knew me well enough to recognize when I'd turned a losing game into a power play. I stayed rooted at the altar, calm as ever. Years of courtroom practice had taught me to control a room. And right now, this wasn't just a wedding. This was a trial, and Claire had just confessed her betrayal with her own words. "Jason, what the hell was that?" Rachel hissed as she stormed up the aisle. "You couldn't keep this private?" I tilted my head. "Private. She wanted to abandon me an hour before the wedding. She made it public the moment she dialed my number." Rachel's lips trembled, but she had no rebuttal. She turned and stormed out, her heels clicking against the hardwood like gunshots. The guests were caught in limbo. Do they leave? Do they stay? One of my uncles raised his glass awkwardly, muttering, "Well, cheers then," and took a sip. That broke the tension slightly, though the air still reeked of scandal. That's when my phone began buzzing in my pocket. Her name lit up the screen. Claire. Call after call, then a flood of voicemails. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She was unraveling exactly the way I expected. I finally addressed the guests again. "I'd like to thank you all for coming. Please enjoy the reception. Food and drinks are paid for. Consider it a party on me. If my composure unsettled them, that was fine by me. The truth is, I wasn't performing for them. I was performing for Claire. I wanted her to know, wherever she was, that I wasn't broken, wasn't begging, wasn't even fazed. By the time I stepped outside, my phone had nearly overheated from her desperate attempts to reach me. Voicemails piled up, her voice growing more frantic with each one. "Jason, please don't do this. I just needed time. I didn't mean it like that. You're humiliating me. Stop, please." I scrolled through the messages, my jaw tightening. Humiliation. That's what she was worried about, not me. Not the vows we'd written, not the life we'd planned. Just her image, her reputation. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and walked into the night air. The estate's garden stretched before me, quiet and serene, the opposite of the storm brewing in my voicemail box. For the first time in years, I felt untethered. Free. By the time I reached my car, the voicemail count had climbed into the double digits. Claire wasn't just panicking, she was spiraling. Every message sounded more desperate than the last, her voice cracking under the weight of fear and embarrassment. "Jason, please, pick up. We can talk about this. I swear I just got scared. Don't ruin everything. Why are you doing this to me? You're making me look like a fool. Just stop the recording. Stop the jokes. I'll come back. I'll fix it." Her words were all about her, how she looked, how she felt. Not once did she ask how I was holding up, or acknowledge the knife she'd driven straight through my chest with that voicemail. It told me everything I needed to know. When I got into my car, I didn't start the engine right away. Instead, I played her messages back one after another, letting the reality sink in. Each voicemail was like a chapter in the same story. Claire was terrified of losing control. And now, for the first time in years, I wasn't giving her the safety net she expected. The calls didn't stop. Then came the texts. Blocks of paragraphs, apologies stacked on excuses. She blamed stress, wedding jitters, her mother's influence, even the weather for her moment of weakness. None of it mattered. She had shown me the truth, and I wasn't about to pretend otherwise. That's when my phone buzzed with a different caller ID. Her mother. I hesitated, then answered. "Jason, what on earth are you doing?" The mother's voice snapped through the line, all sharp edges and indignation. "Good evening to you too," I replied evenly. "You embarrassed my daughter in front of everyone. She made a mistake, but you didn't have to destroy her reputation." I let out a low chuckle. It's funny, I don't recall her worrying about my reputation when she decided to pull out an hour before the wedding. Her mother's silence spoke volumes. She wanted to argue, but the facts were undeniable. Finally, she sighed. "You're making a mistake. Couples fight. People have doubts." "True," I said, starting the engine. "But couples who fight and have doubts usually don't wait until the wedding day to announce it." I hung up before she could answer. By the time I got home, my voicemail box was full. Claire, her mother, even Rachel, the maid of honor, had chimed in. They all told the same story. Claire wasn't in the wrong. I was. I was cruel. I was vindictive. I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew the truth. I hadn't overreacted. I had responded. I'd taken her attempt to control me and turned it into her downfall. And judging by the dozens of unread messages still coming in, Claire was finally realizing she wasn't the one holding the strings anymore. The morning after the wedding that wasn't, my phone was a war zone. Missed calls, text threads, voicemails. It wasn't just Claire anymore. It was her friends, her bridesmaids, even a few family members demanding explanations. Apparently, Claire's version of the story had already started making the rounds. Her narrative that I had blindsided her, that I'd embarrassed her without cause, that I was the one who'd run. What she hadn't counted on was that more than 200 people had heard her voicemail. Echo through the reception hall with crystal clarity. There was no hiding from that. People weren't buying her version, no matter how she spun it. Still, Claire tried. Around noon, she showed up at my apartment. Not knocking politely, pounding the kind of pounding that makes your neighbors peek out their doors. When I finally opened it, she looked nothing like the flawless bride she'd spent months curating. Her hair was messy, makeup smudged, dress from the night before wrinkled like she hadn't slept. "We need to talk," she said, pushing against the doorframe like she was trying to shove her way inside. I stayed planted. "About what? You know what? You humiliated me in front of everyone I care about, made me look like some kind of... I raised a hand, cutting her off. Claire, you are what you made yourself look like. I didn't put words in your mouth. I didn't doctor a recording. You did that. You chose that moment, that hour, to tell me you were having second thoughts. Don't rewrite history just because the audience didn't clap. Her mouth opened, then shut. For once, she had no slick comeback. Her eyes darted, searching for an angle, but I wasn't giving her one. She switched tactics. I panicked. I didn't mean it. Everyone has cold feet before big commitments. I was just overwhelmed. I crossed my arms. Overwhelmed enough to pull the trigger, but not enough to own it. Her expression cracked, then tears welling up, voice dropping. Please, Jason, don't do this to me. We can fix it. I'll make it right. But that was the thing. She wasn't asking for us. She was begging for her image back. For her reputation, her carefully crafted perfect couple facade. The woman in front of me wasn't mourning the relationship. She was mourning the audience she lost. I already did my part, I said flatly. I gave you freedom. Now you can live with it. Her tears turned to anger in a snap. You'll regret this. Everyone will see what kind of man you really are. I leaned against the doorframe, calm as ever. Funny thing is, they already saw, and it wasn't me they were shaking their heads at. She stormed off, heels clicking down the hall, leaving a trail of frustrated sobs in her wake. I shut the door, exhaled, and felt a weight slide off my chest. For the first time in years, I was no longer bracing myself for her next performance. And something told me this was only the beginning of her unraveling. The days following the wedding, that wasn't felt like stepping into an entirely new reality. For the first time in years, I woke up without that gnawing sense of walking on eggshells. No more planning around Claire's moods, no more bracing myself for her next demand, just quiet. But while I was finding peace, Claire was unraveling. It started with the group chat we shared with mutual friends. I hadn't said a word in there since everything went down, but others had. Screenshots of her voicemail had been circulating. Someone had even clipped the video from the reception, me standing at the altar, her voice echoing across the hall, guests shifting uncomfortably in their seats. It spread faster than I expected. By midweek, her narrative had collapsed. The friends who once hyped her up were now calling her out directly. So you had second thoughts. Fine, but why an hour before the wedding? You couldn't have told him earlier. The support she expected never materialized. That was when the real backlash started. Her maid of honor, Jen, texted me privately. I'm so sorry. I didn't know she was planning to pull that stunt. None of us did. Even her own bridesmaids had turned cold, some dropping out of her life entirely. Apparently, Claire had been burning bridges long before this, alienating people with her drama, her self-importance, her need to control every room she walked into. Now, the cracks were visible to everyone. Her family was next. I got a call from her brother, a guy I'd always gotten along with. He didn't mince words. Jason, I know you don't owe us anything, but thanks. She needed a reality check. That one hit me harder than I expected. He wasn't defending her, was relieved. Meanwhile, Claire was scrambling. She posted one of those Notes app apologies on Instagram. Long paragraphs about anxiety, pressure, and being misunderstood. It was polished, carefully curated, exactly the kind of PR spin you'd expect from her. But the comments section didn't go the way she wanted. People weren't buying it. Humiliated him publicly, and now you're blaming anxiety? This isn't accountability, it's damage control. Within hours, she turned off comments altogether. Still, the messages kept coming to me. Some people reached out with sympathy, others with gossip. Apparently, Claire had been venting to her new friend, the man she'd been toying with emotionally during our engagement. Turns out he wasn't sticking around now that the spotlight was on. He ghosted her almost immediately after the fallout went public. The irony wasn't lost on me. She whispered she was having second thoughts, expecting to step into something better. Instead, she ended up alone, exposed, and humiliated. And me, I wasn't celebrating exactly, but I wasn't grieving either. I was just free. Free in a way I hadn't realized I'd been craving for years. What I didn't know then was that Claire wasn't done. Her desperation had only just begun. The next move she made would prove how far she was willing to go to claw her way back. I thought Claire would eventually accept reality, lick her wounds, and move on. But if there was one thing I should have learned by now, it was that Claire didn't lose gracefully. The escalation started small. Late-night calls from blocked numbers, voicemails filled with tears, apologies, excuses. She'd swing from blaming anxiety to begging for another chance to accusing me of ruining her life. Yes. All within 2 minutes. I didn't respond. Silence was my only answer. Then came the bigger stunts. She showed up at my office one afternoon, eyes bloodshot, makeup smeared, asking to just talk. Security had to escort her out when she refused to leave. The next day, HR pulled me aside and asked if I needed a restraining order. That was when I realized how dangerous her desperation was becoming. But the final straw came through mutual friends. One evening, my phone buzzed non-stop with screenshots. Claire had been blasting me in a private Facebook group, claiming I had stolen her retirement fund and sabotaged the wedding on purpose. She was rewriting the entire narrative, casting herself as the victim and me as some vindictive monster. The problem? People weren't buying it. Friends who had once stayed neutral were calling her out. "Claire, we all heard the voicemail. You humiliated him. Stop pretending you were blindsided." Even her own cousin chimed in. "You've always been like this. Time to face yourself." Her smear campaign collapsed before it even began. And that's when the panicked messages started again. My voicemail filled up daily with her sobbing, saying things like, "Please, Jason, make them stop. Tell people it's not true. Please, you don't know what this is doing to me." But I wasn't going to rescue her. Not anymore. For years I had been her safety net, the one who smoothed things over, who made her chaos manageable, who absorbed her storms. Now she was facing the consequences of her own choices, and she hated it. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding. I focused on work, reconnected with friends I'd neglected, even started therapy to process years of walking on eggshells. The first time in a long time, I wasn't defined by Claire's orbit. I was just me. The most surprising moment came a month later. I got a letter in the mail-in, actual handwritten letter from Claire. No theatrics, no dramatics, just shaky words scrawled across paper. She admitted she had been selfish, manipulative, and cruel. She said losing me was like being dropped into cold water, and that she finally understood what everyone had tried to warn her about. I folded it neatly, slid it back into the envelope, and put it in a drawer. I didn't respond, not because I was angry, but because I was done. The truth was simple. Claire had set fire to our future, and I had walked away with nothing but freedom. And freedom, as it turned out, was worth more than any wedding, any promise, any apology. For the first time in years, I was finally at peace.